honestly, Pat, the truth of the matter, interesting crowd that night.
Yes.
I thought it was like a diverse, young crowd for the most part. You know, there was a bunch of olds like us
Yeah, yeah,
there
there
for
was.
sure. You know, but really happy to see quite a younger crowd there, including children.
Including a few children. Super surprising, but I guess people thought this was horror, like maybe in the Bloomhouse, like Conjuring tradition,
Oh,
where there's one or two gory moments, but for the most part, it's okay for kids to watch. Well, like you were in for a surprise. Um, so like I think we should kind of get into it. Like you bring up the crowd, so I think we had an amazing audience. Like it was pretty
we
much
did.
packed in there and people were
Yeah.
like into it. Some occasional applause during some parts, like laughter during some parts. So, um, I
Yeah.
think it's good to compare this to Renfield because we also said Renfield had a great crowd, which it did. Um, since we talked about Renfield, it's been reported that did not do so well at the box office. And
Really?
one of the reasons was it wasn't attractive to mainstream audiences, which kind of goes to something we talked about was that it was very much new its audience, and it very much was for horror fans and a specific horror fan
Yeah.
at that. Evil Dead Rise, on the contrary, it's exceeded expectations. And one of the things that people are praising, it's getting praise like commercially and through the audience. But one of the things that people are praising it for is it is speaking to older fans, like the hardcores who are going to go no matter what. But it's also made itself accessible to the mainstream. Oh, I think that's a very good starting point because we talked about Renfield kind of closing itself off to the mainstream, and box office wise has done so well. Evil Dead opening itself up to the mainstream. And I don't know if that was their intention or not, because I didn't really see it as a mainstream horror movie while we were watching it. But you're right. Audience super diverse. This was a movie theater audience. This was not a midnight movie audience.
Yeah, I was truly pretty surprised. I had a tinge of worry that, you know, we were gonna walk in there and it was gonna be, you know, that we were gonna be the only people in there, and it was gonna
Yeah,
signal the death of Evil Dead, you know.
right.
Not at all what we are encountering. Like exactly what you just said though. This is so fucking far left of what I would consider like a mainstream horror movie
Mhm.
that I find that very surprising. That said, the world is completely fucking falling apart and things are more fucked up than ever. And the internet, you know, shows us this all the time. So maybe, yeah, this is fucked up for our sensibilities.
It might be for today's world also. Like this Evil Dead Rise, it's closer to the original Evil Dead than it is the Evil Dead 2 and Army of Dark. Like it doesn't have like that Three Stooges aspect to it, though it does have some humor in it.
Yeah.
It's not as zany as the latter ones, so maybe that makes it more accessible to the. I don't know, but like I'm just like you. I was a little bit worried that there would be like two other people in there,
Mhm.
but there is a little bit of a downside. So it's at least for me it is because I would say that Evil Dead, and this doesn't mean it's the best franchise, but it's definitely the most consistent horror franchise because there, I would say that there isn't a bad movie in the bunch, and
Oh,
name a horror franchise that can say that.
man, that's a very salient point right there. Um, it's weird, right? Because I feel well. I did see maybe it was like on oh, it's one of those trendy nerd sites, Gizmodo or one of those. Um, it was an article about how there's kind of been some backlash nowadays for Army of Darkness and how Army of Darkness is too stupid in now for the like now that one is too far too a far field than the rest of them. And I'm thinking, you know, and like you said, this one definitely not, you know, Three Stooges like literally poking your eye jokes.
Right.
It's definitely not that. definitely I don't get the spirit of like, okay, let's go. Like, no, this needs to be a gritty series. Like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Like, one of the best parts about Evil Dead is that it can walk that line, right? It can walk both those worlds.
Right.
And like, if the next one that they did was completely batshit fucking Army of Darkness levels crazy zany, I'm super cool with it. So you nailed it. What a unique property to have such leeway, in my opinion, to do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised to hear that about Army of Darkness because I mean that's what makes it stand out from other horror movies is that it can jump back and forth between the comedy and the horror and but that's a discussion for another day. But what
Sure.
worries me about Evil Dead Rise is for sure we know like and Bruce Campbell has said too that and this is one of the things that works in Evil Dead's favor is it's never rushed at sequels ever. It takes its time. But now especially after this like amazing box office showing for this movie, they want to get those sequels out really quickly. And that's what worries me because the quality of this series is it's up there. Like it's whether it's your favorite or not is something else, but it's just so hard to argue that it's not the most consistent franchise. But once you start like, okay, we're gonna do an Evil Dead trilogy and we're gonna have everything out by 2025, then that's when you're kind of like, I don't know. Like, that's what we're like. Do I? Yes, I definitely want to see more Evil
Yeah.
Dead sequels. But if I have to wait another 10 years or what, I don't want to wait 10 years. But if it means it's going to be good, then I'd be willing to.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I totally agree with you. I kind of, well, this one, honestly, dude, this one kind of came out of nowhere to me. I wasn't anticipating a new Evil Dead movie coming out at all. Which, when was the last one? 2013. So 10
Yeah,
years.
10 years. Yeah,
10
10
years.
years.
That's okay. If I get one of these every 10 years or so, 5, 10 years, and then they kind of just scratch that itch. I'll tell you what, like, one of the things about this particular one, and we'll get into the finer points, but uh, this one went out of its way to do a lot of like in your face fan service.
Yeah,
And I'm guessing that that's playing really well. While you and I kind of like looked at each other, kind of like laughed, like we're like, ha, they did that.
yeah,
They did
yeah.
the thing. They said the thing. Yeah, that's cool. I don't I don't know if they had to do that, but I guess it's playing really well. And I'm wondering how it is playing for like a large portion of like the diehards.
Yeah, for the diehards, I think they would. I mean, I've heard some people say this is like the best of the bunch. Like next,
Really? Oh,
yeah,
good. That's good. That's cool. I
yeah.
like that. Good.
I mean, people are loving it, and then also for newer audiences, like some of the what to us are callbacks are like they're kind of unique camera tricks, and
Well,
like
right.
yeah. So it's kind of fresh eyes looking at it, but the other and then we'll move on to the actual movie. The best part of this success story to me, and I do absolutely love this as an Evil Dead fan. This movie was supposed to come out on HBO Max, and
Really?
so it wouldn't have made near as much money. It wouldn't have reached
Wow.
out. It wouldn't have reached as much of an audience. Like
No.
there wouldn't have been this talk of sequels. Like there wouldn't be this much excitement behind it. So whoever made the decision to say let's put it in theaters just a week after Renfield and a few weeks after Super Mario Brothers, like gutsy call,
You
but
got to raise, dog.
yeah, really, really, really smart decision. Like they knew what
Yeah.
they were doing because it worked, and I'm super happy for that.
Yeah.
Well, Evil Dead Rise, we've touched on it. Well, you know what? Actually, I want to talk about the cold open because I think the cold open, and I'm not saying this to be funny, like that's like the hottest opening in a horror movie that I've seen in years. Just like an amazing opening that almost makes you worry that the rest of the movie can't live up to it. Man, I don't know the last time I saw such a great opening.
Dude, yes. So good. Great imagery. Creepy as shit. Scary. Uh
Gross.
really, really gross. Really felt Evil Dead.
Mhm.
It really, really, really felt very Evil Dead. I loved it. I loved it. It's hard, and this sounds fucked up. It's one of the highlights of the movie. It really
Oh,
is.
easily.
It's one of the
Loved
coolest,
it.
one of the coolest things. Like I would love a poster like of that, of one that particular shot. Like just really, really great. And it kind of keeps you wondering as to how they're going to get to this, at all.
Yeah, and it actually, I was confused for most of the movie. Like,
Well, yeah.
I mean, I was caught up in the movie, and then at the end they explain everything, and the title card coming up as she's coming out of the river, just amazing. I also loved how in the beginning they have the iconic like Deadite rushing through the woods thing,
Yes.
but it's almost too cheesy because they're showing like New Line Cinema, like they're showing all the studio stuff at the same time. It only works because it's the Evil Dead, because that's
Yeah.
what the Evil Dead is, scary, but it's also silly. So, and it turns out that's a drone also, so that's kind of funny. But that opening, man, I loved it. I've heard some people say that they were a little frustrated that they felt that it was not necessary because the core story that we're going to talk about is so good that the beginning and the end are kind of unnecessary. I mean,
Bullshit.
I
I
think
call bullshit.
I think that maybe they're being a little too nitpicky because the opening, it draws you in, like you're like, okay, whatever is going on, whatever you, okay, I don't know what happened, I've never seen an Evil Dead movie, whatever just happened is going to be fucked up the rest of the movie, and then the ending sets up more stories, so I mean, very necessary.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's the perfect. eh, the it's the perfect opening to a thing about unadulterated, careless evil. It's like this evil does not give a shit who it fucks with, only that it gets to fuck with people. And that's the scariest, most fucked up part, is you're just like, this one, we just get a glimpse of this one time. And we'll talk about later, like what you realize about this whole thing, that how insular these Deadeye attacks, or how these, Sumerian goat lord attacks go go. It's very cool. I think they've kind of created a lore that I really enjoy, and I think makes for sequels. And that opening is such a huge part of that. That's what I think. How about that?
Yeah, I agree because the opening pretty much shows that, and the movie itself, like the big reveal, shows that anything can happen at any time, and it can be really contained, or it can get you out of the woods, or it can get you in the city. And you said it
Yeah.
opens itself up to so many stories. Like this, the history of the there's more than one book we now. So
Right.
they just the history of these books. I mean, who knows how many there are over the course of centuries. Oh, like it's
Right.
so, I think what they did was so brilliant. Honestly, I loved it.
I did
Um,
too.
we've talked about tone a little bit. Now, this movie, it's for the most part a pretty straightforward horror movie.
Yeah.
Definitely, it leans more towards the original than the second one, Army of Darkness, like we talked about. But it does integrate that humor sometimes, like when she calls them like titty sucking parasites, like that's pretty funny. Like they do an excellent, like I love the shot that they do where you're watching a good amount of time pass, but
Yeah.
through a peephole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just I thought that was the tone for this movie, I think, was spot on for horror in general, but Evil Dead in particular.